All right, I can turn this into a smooth, emotional, voiceover-ready script with no headings or points, just a flowing narration that will sound natural when spoken. I'll keep the story exactly as it is, but remove the sponsor break and make it sound more like a real, tense conversation with the audience. In 2018, Derek was just 21 years old, a brand new police officer, full of optimism. But that year, his life took a sharp turn. His longtime girlfriend suddenly broke up with him, and it hit him like a punch to the gut. Just weeks earlier, he had uprooted his entire life to move to Colorado, all to be closer to her. Now, he was alone in a place that didn't yet feel like home. For weeks, he dragged himself through each day, heavy with sadness. A close friend finally stepped in, telling him, "Man, you've got to put yourself out there again. Try Tinder. Who knows who's out there?" Clearly, your ex wasn't the one. Derek had always met women in person, at bars, through friends, never online. But loneliness has a way of changing your mind. So he signed up, and before long, he matched with Leah. She was beautiful, far out of his league, at least in his mind. But to his surprise, she seemed just as interested in him. They talked for weeks, their conversations flowing easily, until finally Leah suggested they meet. She lived more than an hour away, but had an idea. There was a park in her town, she said, with a sloping hill that opened to the night sky. From there, you could lie on the grass and look up through the trees at the stars. "We could go stargazing," she told him. The night of the date, Derek drove to her town to pick her up from the hair salon where she worked. She came out smiling, waving as she crossed the sidewalk to his car. They hugged, kissed on the cheek, strangers who already felt like they knew each other. From the salon, Leah guided him toward the park. But when they turned off the main road, Derek noticed something strange. The entrance wasn't marked. It didn't look like the kind of road that would lead into a public park. Instead, it narrowed quickly, the pavement giving way to dirt. Derek wasn't familiar with the area, so he kept driving, trusting her directions. Eventually, the road smoothed back into pavement, and they emerged beside a huge, open field. Relief washed over him. Maybe this was just the weird back way in. Leah pointed out a small lot ahead, but before they could reach it, Derek noticed dim headlights approaching from the other direction. The vehicle moved slowly down the road, a large van. Wanting to give it room, Derek pulled over. But instead of passing, the van stopped. Then, at the last second, it swerved toward him, rolling up almost bumper to bumper. Derek's training as a cop kicked in instantly. This wasn't right. Without hesitation, he told Leah to stay put, grabbed his flashlight, and strode toward the driver's side of the van. Inside sat a large man who looked startled to see him. "What are you doing, man? Why are you blocking me in?" Derek demanded. The man stammered, "Oh, sorry. I'm the caretaker here. We've had trouble with poachers lately. I thought you might be one of them, but I see you're not. Go ahead, enjoy your night." With that, the man backed up, turned around, and drove away. Derek stood in the road for a moment, watching the taillights disappear, then returned to the car. He tried to make light of it. "Apparently, we look like poachers," he joked. But Leah wasn't laughing. She was furiously typing on her phone, barely looking up. That struck him as odd. A strange man had just blocked their car, and she didn't seem curious about what had happened. But Derek let it go, putting the car back in drive. They soon reached a small dirt lot beside the hill Leah had mentioned. They spread out a blanket, unpacked their wine and snacks, and lay back under the open sky. For the first time all night, Derek relaxed. Derek was lying back, watching the stars, when something caught his eye. He was facing the road they had come in on, and up on the hill, in the exact spot where that van had appeared earlier, headlights flickered to life. It was the same van. But this time, it wasn't creeping along like before. It was flying down the hill, barreling straight toward them. Derek's stomach tightened. Before either he or Leah could react, the van roared into the small parking lot and slammed to a stop. So close it nearly clipped his car. The way it was positioned, he couldn't have driven out even if he tried. They were boxed in. Derek and Leah both jumped to their feet. The driver's door opened, and out stepped the so-called caretaker Derek had met earlier. Only now, he had a heavy metal pipe in his hand. He rounded the front of the van, eyes locked on Derek. "Give me your keys and your wallet," he barked. Derek froze. 21 years old, fresh on the force. He wasn't about to hand over anything just because someone told him to. He didn't move, didn't even speak at first, just stared back, letting the man know he wasn't intimidated. But then, out of nowhere, came a blow he never saw coming. Leah, his date, the girl he'd been laughing with just minutes earlier, ran to the man's side. She turned to Derek, her voice cold. "Come on, give us your keys and your wallet." It hit him like a punch to the chest. He wasn't just being robbed, he was being set up. Leah disappeared to the back of the van, came back gripping her own metal pipe, and stepped up beside the man. "We don't want to have to hurt you," she said. Derek's voice was steady, but his mind was reeling. "No." The big man lunged. They crashed to the ground, but Derek knew how to handle himself. In seconds, he was back on his feet, and now he had his concealed pistol drawn. He aimed it at the man, then at Leah. "I'm a cop. Hands up." Now, the pipes clattered to the ground. Still holding them at gunpoint, Derek fumbled for his phone, calling dispatch, giving his name, badge number, and trying to describe exactly where they were. He was mid-sentence when Leah and the man glanced at each other and bolted. Instinct took over. Derek gave chase, crashing into the tree line after them. But then gunshots. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness ahead. Someone was shooting at him. He stopped. He wasn't about to run blindly toward gunfire. Spinning back toward the lot, he sprinted to his car. The van still blocked his path, forcing him into a desperate, grinding back and forth, ramming the fence, cranking the wheel, until finally, the car scraped free. He tore out of the park. At the nearest gas station, he called dispatch again. Minutes later, 2 senior officers he knew pulled up. Derek told them everything. They teased him about getting catfished on his first date, but they knew it could have ended far worse. The 3 of them piled into the cruiser and headed back to the park. "There," Derek said. "That's the van." The officers stopped short, told him to stay put, and moved in with guns drawn. Derek watched them clear the area, then peek inside. When they returned, their joking was gone. Something in their faces had changed. "If you want, I can immediately finish the last bit so it lands with a chilling, cinematic final beat. That way, the voiceover will leave the listener with goosebumps. Do you want me to complete it?" The scene around the van was awful, like something out of a nightmare. It looked like there might even be blood on the ground. The 2 officers didn't waste a second. They called for backup, and soon the place was swarming. Crime scene investigators, uniformed cops, spotlights cutting through the trees as teams pushed into the woods, hunting for the man and woman who'd just tried to rob and possibly kill Derek. But they never found them. Derek told the investigators, "She works at a hair salon just down the road. I picked her up there." Officers went over, spoke to the staff, and came back with something chilling. No one at that salon had ever heard of her. They didn't recognize her name. When shown her picture, they swore they'd never seen her before. That's when it sank in. Leah was a con artist. The entire relationship, every laugh, every message, every moment, had been nothing more than a setup. For Derek, it was crushing. He deleted Tinder that night, swore off online dating for good. But what haunted him more than the betrayal was the question that still lingered. If he hadn't been carrying his concealed weapon, would he have ended up in the back of that van? The summer of 2019, another story began to unfold, this time in a quiet Dallas suburb. Barbara, a grandmother, was spending the weekend at her daughter's house, looking after 3 grandchildren while their parents were away. 2 of them were under 6 years old. The oldest, Alyssa, was 15. Whenever Barbara stayed overnight, she liked to keep the kids' routine the same, meaning she slept at their house. It was a modest single-story home, surrounded by friendly neighbors in a neighborhood where crime was practically non-existent. That night, she tucked the younger kids in first, then stayed up a bit later with Alyssa, chatting in the kitchen before bed. Her room was right next to Alyssa's, both windows facing the side of the property. Barbara had always liked sleeping with the window open. That night was no different. She slid the glass up, left the screen in place, and drifted off. At about 3 a.m., she woke to rustling outside. At first, she thought it was an animal. But then the sound came again, heavier, deliberate. Footsteps. She rolled onto her elbows and peered through the curtain. Moonlight spilled over the fence, the neighbor's darkened house, and a bicycle leaning against the fence on their property. It was too big for the little ones. Not Alyssa's either. More rustling, this time closer to Alyssa's room. Barbara pressed her face to the screen, straining to see. Then, a figure stepped out from the bushes beneath Alyssa's window. A boy, or at least she thought it was a boy, wearing a hooded sweatshirt under a high school letterman jacket. He backed away from the window, looking up toward it. Barbara assumed it was a teenage friend. Maybe Alyssa had invited him before knowing Barbara would be there. She wasn't about to call the cops on a kid. She'd been a high school teacher for decades and knew how to handle rowdy teenagers. She got out of bed, went to the front door, flicked on the outside light, and stepped onto the porch. Walking to the corner, she leaned out and called, "Can I help you?" The figure turned, and instantly, her stomach dropped. This was no teenager. He looked mid-20s, maybe 30s. He didn't flinch, just stared at her, calm, unbothered. Then he started walking toward her. "Stop. Right there," she ordered. He stopped. "I'm looking for Alyssa," he said flatly. "Is she home?" Barbara's mind was racing. She decided to test him. "Who did you say you're looking for? Lisa?" "No," he replied without hesitation. "Alyssa McCarran. She lives here." He was right. That was Alyssa's full name. Barbara's voice stayed firm. "It's 3 in the morning. I don't know you. Stay right there. I'll be right back." She went inside, locked the door, and headed straight for Alyssa's room. Barbara slipped quietly into Alyssa's room and nudged her foot, shaking her gently. Alyssa stirred, sitting up groggily, blinking in confusion. "What's going on?" she mumbled. Barbara's face was tense, her patience worn thin by the strange turn of the night. In her mind, the only explanation was that Alyssa had brought this on herself. "Did you invite a boy here tonight?" she asked sharply. Alyssa frowned, baffled. "No, what are you talking about?" Barbara narrowed her eyes. "There's a boy outside who knows you by name. He says you live here. He's standing in the yard right now. Can you please go out there and tell him that showing up unannounced at 3 in the morning is not polite, and that he should never do it again?" Still confused, Alyssa leaned toward the window, pulling the curtain aside. She peeked out and instantly recoiled. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "He asked for me by name?" "Yes," Barbara said. "He said Alyssa McCarran lives here." Alyssa's eyes widened. "We have to call 911. I've never seen him before in my life." It hit Barbara like a wave. This wasn't a friend. This was a stranger, a grown man, and he had been lurking outside Alyssa's window in the middle of the night. Before she could say another word, footsteps creaked across the porch. Barbara's instincts kicked in. "Stay in bed. Don't move," she ordered, her voice low but urgent. She darted into her own bedroom, yanked the window shut and locked it, then ran to the front door, her heart pounding. She prayed she'd locked it earlier, but wasn't certain. She reached it. Thankfully, it was locked. Now she stood there, just inches away from the stranger, separated only by the door. Silence. Then, knocking. Loud, deliberate. The sound jolted her. "There's no Alyssa McCarran here," she shouted. "You have the wrong house. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." The knocking paused, then a man's voice replied, calm and cold. "I know Alyssa lives here. Tell her to come outside." The knocking started again, harder this time. Barbara grabbed the phone and dialed 911, raising her voice so the man could hear every word. She made it crystal clear. She was calling the police. He must have heard, because the knocking stopped. Through the narrow glass pane beside the door, Barbara caught a glimpse of him running toward the side of the house, where his bike had been. Still on the phone, she hurried into the guest room and peered out the side window. She watched him pedal furiously across the street, stop beside an SUV, toss his bike into the trunk, and jump into the passenger seat. Moments later, the car sped off into the night. He hadn't been alone. When the police arrived minutes later, Barbara gave them everything she could, the vehicle description, the man's appearance, every detail of what had happened. They told her she wasn't the only one. Other households with young girls had reported a similar man, one who posed as a teenager online, hunted for personal details, then appeared in person in the dead of night. Alyssa had never seen him before, but now, they both had to wonder, how many nights had he been standing out there, silently watching her through the glass? Got it. You want this turned into a smooth, emotion-filled narration without changing the story. I didn't have a female friend to bring, so I brought him along instead. I told them, I'll pay for him. I'm not asking you to cover his costs. Everything he touches, paperwork, hotel, flights, will be on me. But the driver, he didn't look upset about the money. His frustration felt different, like our change of plans had ruined something they were expecting to do. And now, with Mitch in the picture, whatever it was, they couldn't go through with it. As Wendy and the driver kept going back and forth, his tone sharpening with every word. The man who had originally greeted us slid into the front seat. The two of them began arguing in rapid Portuguese. Wendy and Mitch exchanged an uneasy glance. Neither of them had any idea what was happening. Suddenly, the shouting stopped. The driver turned back toward Wendy and, once again, asked, "Where is the other girl?" Wendy's voice was steady but firm. "There is no other girl. It's Mitch and me. That's it." The driver scoffed, disgust plain on his face. Without another word, he turned back to the road. Then the greeter got out, walked to the rear of the vehicle, popped the trunk, and tossed our luggage onto the curb. He came to Mitch's side, opened the door, and said flatly, "Get out." We stepped onto the sidewalk. The door slammed. And just like that, they sped off. Wendy stood there, stunned, her mind racing. They have nothing to do with the hotel, she thought. They were just drivers, sent to pick up two girls. We showed up with a girl and a guy, and it ruined their plan. She quickly emailed Marissa, the contact she'd been speaking with at the hotel, and also messaged the Instagram account with over 10,000 followers that had first reached out to her. Then they waited. Mitch finally broke the silence. By the time they reply, we could just take an Uber to the hotel ourselves and clear this up. It made sense. The ride was short, but the moment they stepped out, Wendy noticed something odd, the hotel's logo. It wasn't quite the same as the one on the Instagram page she'd been communicating with. It was close, but different. Inside, they went straight to the front desk and asked for the manager. A woman named Kelly invited them into her office, and Wendy explained the deal she'd made with Marissa. Kelly frowned. "I'm the marketing person here. My name's Kelly. We don't have any influencers staying with us, and I would know." Wendy showed her the Instagram page. Kelly's eyes widened. "That's our old account. We rebranded and deleted it. Or at least, I thought we did. Someone must have taken it over." And that's when it hit Wendy. The whole thing had been a scam. Every message, every arrangement, fake. And the most chilling question was, to what end? What would have happened if she'd brought another young woman instead of Mitch? Overwhelmed and embarrassed, Wendy apologized and left. Outside, she broke down in tears. Mitch gently said, "You need to tell the police. Whatever they had planned, it wasn't good." So she called. To her surprise, they immediately wanted to send a detective to meet her. Within minutes, a man arrived, introduced himself, and asked them to sit down inside. "If you want, I can now go back and do this same natural, cinematic voiceover style for all the earlier parts you sent, so the whole story feels seamless. Would you like me to do that?"